Once upon a time, bad bitch Eva villain lived in the city.
So in my most previous vlog, I touched on the subject of mental illness, in particular schizophrenia, and I shared that my youngest brother, there are four of us children in the family, four siblings, my oldest sister, my older brother, me, I would think maybe that makes me the middle child, and then our youngest brother. And it is our youngest brother who was diagnosed with schizophrenia at the age of 17. We've lived with schizophrenia for 36 years. We are very much a huge part of his life. We've always been. My brother is admitted into a psychiatric unit. He has been in there for a while. My mom had to go to court to fight for him to be in the psychiatric unit, because the system actually has a law that says a person with mental illness cannot be confined involuntarily. So what was going on was during the first onset of my brother's mental illness, schizophrenia, he was at home. My brother lived at home for a multiple amount of years, 4 years, and he had not just my mom or my siblings and I, but also he had like a caregiver also, which was our housekeeper, who also tended to his needs. And these were in previous years. But what happened was my brother was violent. He would have violent episodes which my brother would have fits of violence. And when he would have these fits of violence, we would have to walk out of the house, and he'd be left inside. And when he would eventually calm down, the whole house would be damaged. He would have thrown things around, broken things in his fit of rage. But not just that, in his fits of rage, we couldn't hold him, control him. He was just too strong, too powerful for us to do that, because that's how we were handling it in the beginning. Like my father, my brother would try and contain him and hold him physically, but it got to, we couldn't. He was just too strong, like physically strong. Because of his violent outbursts, we were in danger of harm, of injury, and we put up with it for so many years. Mainly it was my mom and his caregiver that were most at risk, because they were the individuals that were with him 24 hours in that household. I lived in my own home with my kids and my partner, my common law. And so, but I was a daily part of my brother's life. And it was mainly my mom who was at high risk of being injured or seriously or tragically harmed because of my brother's mental illness. There was the turning point, I believe, was there was a time when my brother got violent, extremely violent, and my mom was in extreme fear. And I was already like, we were living with that for years, this fear, of his violent outbursts, someone eventually dying from it. And it dawned on me, what my mom is going through is a form of domestic violence. My brother is not her spouse. My brother is not her partner, but the violence is happening within a domestic environment. our home, my mom's home and my brother's home that they shared. The domestic violence was happening within the domestic violence was happening in a domestic setting. So I reached out to our local domestic violence chapter through I think the Department of Public Safety. I reached out to their office and I said, you need to help my mom. My brother has schizophrenia. She has mental illness. You need to guide us in what we can do, because we live in constant fear. Most especially my mom, because she lives in the same household as him, and he is extremely violent, and we fear that one day he might cause her death, or severe injury, severe harm, cause her death. And even though my brother is not her spouse, this is a domestic environment that they are in, and this and something needs to be done before it's too late. And I'm what I wanted to ask is, can we pursue this issue under domestic violence, so that my mom and my brother also, this protection was not just for my mom, for us, his family, but it was also a protection for my brother and for the community, because of those violent outbursts of his. Everyone was in danger while he was, not in a secure, psychiatric facility. And I remember the individual I talked to at that time was the head of that domestic violence department. And I think his name was Jesse. My mom, they had to go through court in order to have my brother be committed in a psychiatric unit. And it was done because he was violent. There was an endangerment to my mom, not just to my mom, an endangerment to my brother himself, and endangering the community. And when they went to court, my brother eventually became a patient under the psychiatric unit, where he remains today. But he is cared for under that psychiatric unit. But we also, my family plays, most specifically my mom and my sister right now, because they are the family members that are back on the island. Myself and my older brother, we live in the United States. So we still play a role in caring for him and loving him, but it's mainly my mom and my sister that are physically, and of course, my cousin, my daughters, that gather and rally and continue to care for him, along with the psychiatric unit nurses and doctors, and care for him and are there for him. So one of the things that I wanted to also talk about, I know I keep looking over and it's annoying, but I'll try to focus on looking at the camera. But if I tend to keep, I'm sorry, I know it's annoying. I will try my best. One of the things that I wanted to emphasize is females, and especially our role as a mother in regards to schizophrenia and mental illness, because I see it with my mom. There's a certain percentage of a death resulting from a child killing his or her mother because of schizophrenia or mental illness, and the term is called matricide. And back on the island, I have a clear memory of matricide on the island, where there was this one male individual who lived with his mom, who took either I'm sorry, this is going to be very violent, graphic, verbal content, what I'm about to say. He took a machete, and he hacked his mom to death, and he was mentally ill. And you have to understand, there's like a small percentage of matricide. It's not like 95%, but for that to happen on the island, it's crazy. Not long ago, 2024, I watched the news, and this was when I was still living in Portland, in Oregon. I was still living in Oregon. And what happened was, there was a family whose son was mentally ill, specifically schizophrenia, and he killed his mom. And this was just 2024, and it happened in Portland, in Oregon. And I think the family was just so, they questioned why there was like a failure in the system, in failing to protect her and to protect him, to protect the public, the public, the community. It protects everyone. If he had been institutionalized, or admitted into us, if his parents had been able to admit him into a mental facility, like a psychiatric unit, her life would have been spared. And that's what and then again, of course, the incident that I told you, where I was on mass transit on the Max rail, and I got off with a male individual, and he approached these security transit officers, and I clearly heard him say, "I'm hearing voices in my head." And then I turned to go, just take care of the things I needed to take care of. And by the time I was able to concentrate on the things around me, I saw him walking away out into the streets. We don't know. What if he had caught a public transit bus? Here, he walked away out into. What if he attempted to get on a public transit bus and was suffering from anxiety, was clearly having a mental episode where he said he was hearing voices, and caused a serious injury, harm, death to other individuals that were on that bus? These are the system makes it so, no, you can't. You as a family member, clearly knowing that this person you love is mentally ill, suffering from schizophrenia, you cannot admit them into a psychiatric unit where they are more likely, less likely to cause harm to themselves, because they're cared for by truly caring people, and you're spared that. The most recent encounter I had with the subject of matricide was HBO Max's movie, The Task, which was good. But in that show, one of the main characters, they were parents that were foster parents, then eventually adopted these children from the age very young, but eventually when one of the children was older, he killed his mom, his adoptive mom, his adoptive mom, his mom. He killed her, and he was then was was in jail, was incarcerated. So it's interesting how that show Task has that controversy as part of its plot line, and which is not just interesting, but it's good because it makes us aware of these issues. It brings it to the forefront, which is some of us do have that type of life. But the other thing that I wanted to touch on is why is the system that way. These individuals, they qualify for, it's either called SSDI or SSI, and these are two different things. One of them is the availability of funds to an individual with mental illness if they've had a history, if they have a history of employment. The other program, or the other, I don't know the term. The other one is called SSI, and that's available to an individual with mental illness or schizophrenia established and confirmed. Is available to those individuals that have never worked, which is, for an example, my brother, who, was diagnosed with schizophrenia at the age of 16, 17 years old. So he never had the opportunity to work. And so what happens is, it seems like the only time these mentally ill individuals can avail of those funds that provide them with basic needs of life, food, shelter, personal needs, is if they're living with family, and in which the family member can then process whatever is needed to be able to collect those funds, so that it's available for that individual with a mental illness, or of course, if they are in a facility that provides care for them. But if an individual is just out on their own in the streets, just with no one there to guide them, no one there to care for them, they're not in the right mental capacity to know, okay, I have this available to me every month because I am truly, authentically, mentally ill. So I need to, fill out this stuff and this stuff in order for me to be able to access it this month, for example, which most people with mental illness, schizophrenia, are unable to do because they're not in their right state of mind. So they are unable to request for this financial help that really is truly for them, to just for food, for shelter, just the basic needs to live a humane life. And so those are the three ways. Either the person with the mental disability lives with family, and the family is the one that is able to process that financial support for that individual with mental illness. Number two, they have to live with the risk of putting their own lives at risk, because most of the time people with mental disorders are. So you have to be like, I'm a mom, my child has mental illness, so I'm going to process, what is rightfully my child, because he or she truly is like ill. But I also do have to live with the risk of my child harming me, killing me, harming himself, or harming, the public. And or he can be in an institution or a facility that can provide true care for him, but I can't do it voluntarily. I do have to go through a process through the judicial system, and then they can avail of the funds then. Or number three, the third option is, this is my child, but I cannot care for him because I have to go to work. I don't live the type of life where I am financially stable enough where I can stay at home and watch over my mentally ill child 24 hours and provide care. No, I have to also go out and work in order to be able to support myself with the basic needs of food, shelter. So my child is left, either left to wander on their own eventually, like families, even though they don't want to, their individual families, that individual that's suffering from mental illness eventually ends up homeless and out on the street, and they are not able to avail of that financial support that they are so deserving of. I hope I made a lot more sense with this vlog in regards to mental illness and schizophrenia. And I hope I was able to, I don't know, like just be able to let others know that are going through this, that you're not alone, and you're not alone.